I was ignored at my niece's graduation. 2 days later, they all started calling me. In the small town of Willow Creek, I was the only one not invited to my niece's graduation. She was the niece I helped raise while her parents traveled the world. I didn't complain. Instead, I took a few days off and drove to the countryside. 2 days later, they started calling me. Something had gone wrong. But by then, I'd already learned that silence can be an answer too. From a young age, I learned to be okay with little. Not because I didn't have dreams or wishes, but because I grew up hearing that other people's needs were more important than mine. My younger sister's plans always needed more attention. Her feelings were more fragile. The family's future depended on her choices. I was the mature one, the one who understood, the one who could manage on her own. My name is Sarah Miller. I'm 58 years old, never married. Maybe that's why they used it as a quiet excuse for everything they put on my shoulders. As if not having a husband or kids made me free to solve everyone's problems. When my niece, Emily, was born, my sister Laura and her husband were climbing the ladder at work. They were always traveling, events, meetings, trips. It quickly became clear they couldn't handle a baby's routine. That's when they asked for my help, just for a little while. They said, that little while turned into years. I stayed up nights with high fevers, rushed her to the hospital, helped with school projects. I went to her dance recitals, math tests, taught her how to tie her shoes, write her name, and sort laundry, light from dark. I was the steady presence while her parents were often gone. I never complained. I did it all with love, as if she were my own. But despite all I gave, the family never saw my role. I was just the aunt, like that explained everything. At birthdays, parties, and thank you speeches, I was there but never in the spotlight. Always on the sidelines. When Emily turned 15, they made a video with photos from her baby years to her teenage days. It showed her grandparents, other uncles, school friends, even babysitters. I appeared in just one photo, tucked in the corner. It hurt, but I swallowed it. Back then, I tried to make excuses for them. Maybe they forgot by mistake. Maybe they didn't have good photos of me. Maybe I was overthinking it. That's what I'd learned to do. Doubt my own pain so others wouldn't have to deal with it. Over time, I became the practical helper, never the emotional one. If Emily needed a ride from school, I was there. If she had a doctor's visit, I went along. If she had a big performance, I was in the audience. But when the family gathered to celebrate a promotion, a trip, a success, I was usually told last. Or not at all. Still, I stayed, for Emily. She grew up calling me her second mom. But that stopped when she hit her teenage years. As the years passed, her parents' influence and her own social life changed how she saw me. She started treating me with distance. It was like the love we had was part of a childhood she wanted to forget. She became polite, colder, formal but absent. And once again, I stayed quiet. Because I thought real love doesn't demand to be seen, it loves even from far away. In her final year of college, I noticed the family buzzing with excitement. They talked about party plans, shared messages in group chats I wasn't even part of anymore. One day, I overheard my sister talking to a cousin about the catering for the event. Another day, I heard my brother-in-law on the phone, arranging the venue rental. No one told me anything directly. Still, I held on to hope. Maybe they were waiting for a special moment to invite me. Maybe Emily wanted to surprise me. Maybe. Graduation day came and went. No one called. No one stopped by. Not even a text, a photo, or a, wish you were here. I saw some pictures on a distant family friend's social media. Emily was smiling, surrounded by her parents, grandparents, friends, and other uncles who barely knew her. Even her parents' co-workers were there. But not me. There wasn't even a hint that I existed. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I realized it wasn't. It was on purpose. The exclusion was real, intentional. I'd been ignored, deliberately. I sat on the edge of my bed for hours, staring at my turned-off phone. I hoped it would give me an answer. But what hurt most wasn't the pain itself. It was the cold, final truth. I was never truly part of that family, even though I'd given the best years of my life to them. The next morning, I packed a small bag, got in my car, and drove to the countryside. No warning, no explanation. I went to a little town called Pine Hollow, where we used to vacation as kids. I checked into a simple inn surrounded by trees and silence. It was the first time in years I chose to be alone. Not because I wasn't invited, but because I needed peace. And there, in that almost healing silence, my phone started ringing nonstop. Something had happened, but by then, something in me had already changed. I wasn't in a rush to answer anymore. The inn I stayed at sat on a small hill, surrounded by old trees and trails that disappeared into the woods. The sky there felt closer, cleaner, like even the clouds were kinder. Even with a heavy heart, there was something freeing about that place. No one knew me there. My name wasn't tied to duties or expectations. The first 2 days passed slowly. I walked, read parts of an old book I'd brought by chance, and wrote. I wrote like I hadn't in decades, about what I felt. What hurt, about everything I'd kept inside for years. All to keep the family's peace. To make things easier for them. After so long in the dark, I was finding my voice. On the night of the second day, as I watched the stars reflecting on the lake, my phone rang for the first time. I ignored it. 10 minutes later, another call. Then a string of calls, my sister Laura. Then Emily. Then my sister-in-law. Messages piled up like dry leaves in an empty yard. But I didn't open any of them. The next morning, as I went down for breakfast, the inn's owner looked worried. "Miss Sarah, sorry to bother you," he said. "A lady called several times, asking about you. She said she was your sister." She sounded upset. "Is everything okay?" I smiled softly. "Yes, it's fine. They're just used to me always being there. I guess they're surprised by my silence." He nodded respectfully and didn't ask more. I went back to my room and stared at my phone for a long time. The notifications glowed like emergency signals. But I didn't touch them. Because in that moment, I understood something I'd never seen clearly before. It wasn't just that I hadn't been invited to the graduation. My presence was never truly needed. I was useful, helpful, convenient, but never celebrated. And that hurt more than any exclusion. I remembered a day when Emily was little. Maybe 5 or 6 years old. I'd picked her up from school. And on the way home, we stopped for ice cream. She looked at me with her big brown eyes, so bright, and said with all the innocence in the world, "Auntie, when I grow up, you'll be my graduation godmother." I laughed then, touched, and held that promise like a secret thread of love I thought would never break. But it did, and it broke so coldly, so easily, without even an attempt to pretend. No excuse. No, we couldn't invite everyone. Nothing. Just silence. The lack of an invitation was its own message. I wasn't forgotten, I was left out. And the cruelest part was they didn't even bother to lie to cover it up. It made me wonder. Had they always seen me this way? As a temporary stand-in, a piece to use while it was helpful? I started remembering other moments. When Emily needed emotional support, I was there. When she had an anxiety attack in her sophomore year and didn't want to tell her parents, I took her to a therapist. I found her help, stayed by her side in her quiet room, held her shaky hand, told her she was strong. But when it was time to celebrate her victories, I wasn't worthy of being there. That's when I understood. Some pains don't shout, they eat away at you quietly. And silent rejection is one of the cruelest. That afternoon, I walked alone on a less traveled trail. I smelled the damp earth, heard the birds, the distant sound of a waterfall. There, in that nature that didn't care about my feelings, I realized something. I was the only one not invited, but also the only one who was always there. The others, they could be celebrated, praised, photographed, but I was the only one who gave my time, my youth, my health, and by some bitter irony, I was the only one who didn't fit in that final picture. That's when my phone rang again. I hesitated, but something I didn't yet understand made me answer. "Aunt Sarah?" It was Emily's voice, shaky, muffled. There was a pause, silence on the other end. "Auntie, something happened. We need you. Please call me." She hung up before I could say anything. I stood still for a long time, phone in hand, hearing only my own breathing. For the first time in years of running to answer their calls. I hesitated, because now, a new question echoed inside me. Did I still want to be there? Emily's call replayed in my mind for hours, breaking into pieces. "Something happened. We need you. Please." But what bothered me most wasn't the message itself, it was her tone. A tone of urgency I knew well. The same tone I'd heard countless times in my life. Whenever things went wrong, Whenever their world fell apart, my name came up, like I was a safe harbor, built to weather any storm, without ever asking if I wanted, or could, be that shelter. This time, though, something in me felt different. I spent the morning by the lake. In no rush, I watched the water move slowly, leaves floating as if carried by time itself. I let myself think something that had always felt forbidden. I don't have to go back. The thought made me uneasy right away. My whole life had been built on the idea that the right thing was to be there. To help, to forgive, always, without conditions, without a break. But now, I didn't have the same energy to put out fires in homes that only remembered me when the flames were too high. I picked up my phone. 2 unread messages. The first was from Laura. Sarah. For heaven's sake, we need to talk to you. It's serious. Call as soon as you can. The second was from Emily. Auntie. I'm sorry. I know you're hurt, but I'm desperate. Please answer. I closed my eyes. The word, desperate, hit differently. Emily wasn't one to overreact. Something had really happened, but part of me didn't want to feel sorry, not out of cruelty, but exhaustion. For the first time, my absence seemed to matter. For the first time, my silence seemed to be heard. And there was something powerful in that. The afternoon passed slowly. I walked a longer trail, went to an old chapel, sat on a wooden bench, and just breathed. I thought of my mom, a woman of few words but so much love. I remembered her telling me, silence is the loudest cry there is. I didn't understand it back then. Now, I felt it in every part of me. I returned to the inn and found a note on my door. The receptionist had written, "Your sister called again. She said it's urgent, wants to know where you are." The word, urgent, stung again. But I went to the inn's lounge, sat down, and wrote in my journal. That's when I realized something. I was at peace for the first time in years. No one expected me to smile to hide my pain, to agree to avoid fights, to dim my light so others could shine. There, alone, I was just me, and that was freeing. The next morning, out of curiosity and a lingering worry, I called an old friend who lived near Laura's house. She always answered kindly, and when she heard my voice, she sighed with relief. "Sarah, thank goodness. They've been looking for you. What happened?" I paused, then asked, "What's going on, Grace?" There was a moment of silence. Then she spoke with a sad tone. Emily was in a car accident. She was coming back from a trip with her boyfriend. They hit a truck head-on. The boy's in bad shape, and Emily's in the hospital with a broken arm and cuts on her face. Nothing life-threatening, but she's really shaken. The news hit me like a punch to the chest. My throat tightened. Emily, hurt. Emily, in shock. Even after all the hurt, my motherly heart reacted on instinct. "Is she awake?" I asked. "Yes, but she's really shaken. She keeps asking for you. They say during the accident, she called out your name. She says she'll only feel better when she sees you." I closed my eyes tight. A storm of feelings crashed over me. Hurt, pain, love, disappointment, guilt, all at once. I wanted to run to her, but something held me back. Because now, for the first time, I knew it wasn't my job to fix everything. Maybe Emily did need me, but she also needed to learn to see how much I mattered. She needed to understand that love isn't something you just take, it's a give and take. Something built together. I hung up with Grace and went back to the trail. Each step I took was also a step deeper into myself. I sat by the lake again and wrote one sentence in my journal. They're finally hearing my silence. And now it's up to me to decide if I want to break it. That morning, the sky was covered with low clouds. It was as if even the scenery shared the weight I carried in my chest. The country breeze didn't calm me anymore. The trees, which once felt like allies in my silence, now whispered questions I didn't want to answer. I felt torn, between the instinct to run to Emily and the need to protect myself. Something I'd always ignored. I went back to my room at the inn and sat in front of my bag. I opened it slowly, looked at the few folded clothes, the book, the journal, and for a moment, I cried. Not out of anger, not even sadness, but exhaustion. I cried for the years I was needed only when it hurt. For the parties I wasn't invited to. For the thank yous that never came. For the times I was too strong for anyone to ask if I needed comfort. I closed the bag but didn't leave right away. I picked up my phone, took a deep breath, and called Laura. She answered on the second ring, like she'd been holding the phone the whole time. Sarah. Oh my gosh. Thank goodness. Where are you? Her voice was shaky. Her crying barely held back. But there wasn't warmth, just desperation. I'm okay, I said. I just heard about the accident. Sarah. She's been asking for you since she woke up. She won't eat, won't take her medicine. She's a mess. The doctor says her emotional state could affect her recovery. Please come. Please. Is she awake? Yes. But she's different. Really shaken. She needs you. There was a pause. I used the silence to ask something stuck in my throat for days. Laura, why wasn't I invited to the graduation? On the other end, the silence stretched out. For the first time, my sister didn't have a quick answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, almost ashamed. It was a mistake, a mix-up. With everything going on, don't lie, I said. You always have everything under control, every detail, every name. You didn't forget the catering, the decorations, your husband's coworkers, but you forgot me. Laura cried on the other end. But this time, it didn't move me. I thought maybe you wouldn't want to come. After everything, she hesitated. After so much emotional distance. That cut through me like an arrow. Distance. Laura, I raised your daughter. I was there for every step. Every crisis. Every win. Even when you all pushed me away. I never stepped back from her. You just never noticed because you never really looked. She was sobbing on the other end of the line. But now, I was the one in control. Sarah, I'm so sorry. Just come. Please. She needs you. I hung up without answering, not out of coldness, but because I needed to think.